So we fire this guy up. Now, like I said, you do have control of both claws. So you have the primary grabber claw, and then this is called the collection claws right here. So these collector claws are able to kind of hang onto the trees as you keep cutting more so that they don't fall out of the grapple. So we hit B to fire it on. And we're just going to go over into the woods here a little bit. Here's a tree. So again, you want to line it up so it's straight with that head. And as you push forward on your stick, you can grab it. Now that secondary set of claws is available now. So we close that secondary set, and basically what it does is it holds that tree in there so that if we open our other claw, it doesn't fall out. And this is really handy for if you're doing tree collection, which we're about to do here now. So as we open that top claw, we can go in for another grab and then collect again. And again, we have that secondary claw has now caught it, so we can do that. Now, it takes a lot of time and patience and playing around to get really comfortable with this machine. I'm just going to lay these down here. Because there is a lot of controls going on. You know, you're controlling your swing, you're controlling your tilt, your two grab arms. It is a lot of complication when it comes to hand and eye coordination. So the key is just to remember, as soon as you close that first claw and you figure you got that cut, that's when you're ready to close that secondary claw. And I always tell people if you're brand new and you're looking to kind of start practicing by going like this. Literally, close your primary claw and your secondary claw, and just sit here and kind of try to get them in sync with each other, so you can feel kind of like a balance. And then once you get that kind of a comfort for closing the claws, you'll start to be able to just really feel it out. But yeah, just practice. That's kind of how she goes. So go in, grab, close, close. Go in, open, there you go, grab, close. And basically you can do that. I think you can do up to 4 or 5 trees with this guy, depending on the size. But it's the quickest way to bunch, in my opinion, if you're trying to get a really large area of smaller trees kind of put together there. There we go. Perfect. So like I said, it does take practice, it does take time, but the main majority and purpose of this thing is to snip the trees at the bottom, grip it, bunch them, and then you want to just lay them somewhere that works for you. And now I'm gonna go over the directional for where you want to lay the trees as well. So we're gonna just drop that there. Okay, so now that we know how both the heads work, we know the difference between both of the heads, you want to know how you should actually be bunching to do it properly. So, for instance, if this is the area we want to clear out, we have all of this space here, we need to pick an area where we want to bring the wood. Where's our landing going to be? So if you hit P on your keyboard, you can actually go into the landscaping tool, hit X. We're going to actually make our own landing here. So we're going to go like this, and I'm just going to carve out a chunk of ground. So this is going to be our landing area. That's what I've decided. And you guys can do whatever you want. There's no rules to how you want to set up your spots. But this just gives me an area. So now I know this is going to be the area of where we want to bring the wood. So the first thing you want to determine is, where's the wood going to go from the bush to get it loaded on the truck? So the main road is right here. So in that case, we always want the wood to come from that direction to this direction to get to the road. Now, the important part of bunching and the buncher operator, you are setting the direction of the skidding. So basically, you're the one in charge of putting the bunches and piling so that you know exactly which way the wood is going to come out so the skidder operator can direct it. Now, on each piece of these trees, there is a butt and a top. So I'm going to just quickly go like this. So this end, being the fatter end, is considered the butt of the log. And then this end, being the skinny end of the tree, is considered the top. So you got the top and the butt. Now you always want the butt end of the tree to be facing in the direction of which you want it to go, because it's really hard to skid from the top. You can do it, but it's really ugly and it's not fun. So if you want to be a good feller buncher operator, you need to always lay these butts of these trees so that they're facing in the direction of which you want the wood to go. Very, very important. Now, I totally understand when you're out on your own in the bush and you're cutting trees, it's really easy to get disoriented. So one of your other jobs as a buncher operator is to always kind of know where you are in relation to where your landing is. So for instance, these are actually set up fine. This tree is facing the right direction. This tree is facing the right direction. But if you start felling in a circle, you want to always make sure your butts are pointing back towards right where you started. So as we bunch, and I'm just going to hop in this guy and we'll go for a little spin here. As you start cutting through these trees, you got to always keep it in the back of your mind where you left your last pile. So looking here, okay, I left a pile here. It's pointing back towards that lake, towards this landing. And actually, we're just going to cut these trees to kind of clean up our spot here. So I'm going to go in, scoop out these, and scoop out this one. And there's another one there. Let's get that one too. There we go. And you can rotate all the way around, and then I would just add them directly to this pile right here, because this is actually already a great pile happening. And again, always butts facing towards the landing. I can't express that enough because I've had a lot of new guys that have played with in multiplayer or had to ask me questions, and a lot of guys will go out in the middle of the woods and they just start dropping trees like random and leaving them all over the place. But you always got to think about the guy after you that has to clean up, especially in single player, because you are going to be that guy. Always think about the next job after you. Will this be hard to skid this out if I put it here? It's very important to do that. Okay, so we're going to throw these here. And we'll drop these here. Because as we go through this series, as I cut this wood and leave these bunches, we will be the next guy that's going to be coming along in the skidder in the next episode to pick up all these bunches that we're creating here. So let's just kind of cut through here. I'm just going to lay these actually right here. And again, because I know that my landing is directly behind me that way, that's why I'm laying those right there. So then a skidder can come along, see these, and it's a really easy job for him. Now, if I would have laid those sideways, it's a lot more work for the skidder because he's got to try to get in there and play around with it, and sometimes they get stuck and you break things, and it's just not a good time. The other important thing you want to try to do to make the skidderman's life a lot easier is to make sure these butts are lined up. So I purposely kind of dropped these two off on an angle here to show you guys. So when there's a variation, sorry, I'm just going to clear some of these trees so we can see what we're doing here. When there's a variation in distance between these ends, these should technically be as flush as possible. And by flush, I mean these logs should all be lined up straight. So you see how this one's kind of off kilter here? It's going to make it a lot harder for the skidderman, especially if he's got a grapple skidder. If he backs up and tries to grab that, he's going to have to try to butt those up, which is a lot of work for some of the skidder operators when they're trying to do production stuff. So instead of giving him extra work to do, it's so easy for me as a buncher operator to turn my head off and just give that a little bump. Actually, it's better if you do it from the side because I'm kind of trying to do it from the front here. So what I'm trying to demonstrate is if you go from the side and you give it just a little bump like that, you see how those are now all nice and lined up? So now when the skidder guy comes along, he can back up to this little group of trees and grab that and take off. But if for some reason, see if I can pick this up, there we go. If this is like way over here and that one's way back there, it's just a pain in the butt for the skidder operator because now you're just making his job a lot harder for no particular reason. So if you want to be a good feller buncher operator, it's not just about technique for using the head and using the equipment. It's about knowing the layout of the bush, and it's about knowing who's going to be taking the wood, what the next job coming is, and being able to help those guys out. Okay, so let's keep cutting a little more here. We actually have a hill over here, so I'm going to go up that way because I want to demonstrate uphill versus downhill bunching as well. And again, this is just little tips and tricks that I've learned playing this game. Whether the same stuff works in real life or not, that's up to real life people. But for this game, I try to run it a particular way to make it a little bit easier for the next guys in the line. So let's get this one. I'm trying to kind of head up this hill here, so we might just back around this pile a little bit. There we go. And again, I'm kind of dropping them a little wacky here. There we go. So make sure it's nice and bunched up here in a line. The other thing that's important is distance. So the skidder grapple isn't wide enough to pick up that full range like that. Like, it's really hard because the grapple's only, you know, like my grapple's only so big. I can only pick up that much. So the best thing you can do is always try to keep, try to keep these in a bunch together, if that makes sense. When you're dropping multiple groups, it's a lot easier than trying to go back and correct. And sometimes on hills, it'll kind of fall apart. See, like that bunch is a little bit easier. I know a skidder could back up and grab that no problem because its grapple opens a lot further than these tongs. So if your bunch is within this tong range here, like this grapple range, you can know a skidder is not going to have a problem opening it. So again, you can start talking about distance too, like how many trees, depending on the size and diameter of the tree, how many to put in a bunch. Generally for these smaller trees, you can put up to maybe 10, 12 trees in a pile for a skidder to grab, and it won't have any troubles with it. So that's all stuff that you guys will discover as you start skidding and bunching and kind of figuring that stuff out as well. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to purposely try to climb a hill here so I can get up here. And I'm just going to lay these this way. Again, butts facing the direction of the landing. And I know the landing is directly pretty much behind me based on the piles as I go. So you're basically just kind of keeping the arrows straight as you cut. And I think I could probably do up to 4 of these guys in here. Oh yeah, no problem. And we want to try to keep that bunch as straight as possible. There we go, beautiful. So now we're starting to kind of cut uphill. So I wanted to kind of demonstrate, and let's see if we can walk over to an area that's a little steeper here. I'm just gonna meander through the trees. Oops, and try not to hit too many things. Oh, my track is stuck on that. Normally I would cut the trees instead of walking up between them, but we want to give a quick example of how that all works. So let's go up here. So this isn't crazy steep terrain, but it still is a little bit steeper for cutting. So the purpose cutting downhill versus uphill. So let's look at it from downhill. The easiest way to cut trees is always going to be from the down up, because you're always at the base of the tree for access. The other way you can do it is lateral. So if you want to go across a hill, that also works really well. But if you're bunching, to bunch downhill is not the best way to go because you do end up leaving a lot of the stump. And I'll show you why here. If we can get unmangled from our new best friend, the tree here. There we go. It's okay. We'll destroy that tree later. Learn its lesson. Okay, so let's go. I want to go up this hill a little bit. So like I said, as I approach this tree, this will be a good example. My head's off, so my blade's not spinning. I'm just going to kind of push it up against the tree. So you can see if I cut from downhill uphill, I'm always going to have the base of the tree nice and clean, easy to cut. It's a really simple grab to do. Oops, there we go. So let's, oops, jeez. Still learning my controls here. So you can really easily grab these trees from the base because you can see them really clearly as you go up the hill. And you just kind of peel them right off the side of the hill, which is really, really easy way to do it. And I'm actually just going to lay these this way because we don't really have a landing setup plan here yet. There we go. Now, if I wanted to cut downhill, and we're going to use this tree as the example, this isn't super steep, so you could probably still get away with it here, but I just want to kind of show the reasoning. So if I wanted to cut downhill, if I wanted to keep my blade flat while I'm cutting downhill, this is how high I would have to keep it to have it be flat. See how that's flush with the tree? But look how big of a stump I'm going to leave behind. There'll be that whole space of a stump left behind if I cut it from uphill down. And you want to try to eliminate stump height as much as possible. You don't really want a big gangly stump sticking out. So if I want to go cut this, turn our head on here. If I want to cut it flush, I can punch out, grab it. But see, look how big that stump is that we've just left behind now, right? And that's not what you want. Now, you can always go clean up the stumps if you want by going like that and kind of clipping it off. But you do lose a percentage of the tree. I mean, it may not be a lot, but you take that chunk of, you know, 1.5 foot a tree and times that by 100 trees on a hillside, you know, that equals out to be several many trees. So let's go cut laterally, which is another great way to do it, which is allows you to cut across the hill. Again, still not as great as uphill, but it still works to go cutting directly across. Oops, as I turn my head off, there we go. And again, if you're cutting laterally, you still do get a little bit of a bump, but as you can see, the stumps are a lot lower. So my recommendation, I'm just going to turn this guy off here. Let's just throw this in the woods here somewhere. Looks good. My recommendation to anybody who's using a buncher, always start at the bottom of a hill and work your way up. Or if you have no option to work from the bottom, like if it's just really terrible terrain, do your best to work laterally. And then in the odd event you absolutely have to go downhill, it's the only way to get to the wood. You're just going to have a lot of high stumps and a lot of cleanup, but you know, in some situations that's just the way she works. So yeah, that basically covers the operation of the feller buncher heads and the different types.